Song Revolution with John Chisholm on the NRT Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Song Revolution. You are why I do the show. I want to encourage you and inspire you to a better life, whether you're a songwriter or music lover, or just someone who stumbled across the show and got curious. I'm so glad you're here. Be sure to like and share and subscribe and do all those nice social media things to help us share the love. Because if you like the show, chances are there are more people in your world who would like it too. So thanks for sharing it out. I love the interviews that I get to do with many of the most popular artists and songwriters around these days, and today is a knockout with word music's phenomenal artist Blanca. She's doing some amazing work these days and should win an award for the most transparent artist with her new record, The Heartbreak and the Healing. This is an album in which she fuses pop, Latin, hip-hop, and gospel elements to talk about her very real divorce and the lessons that she's learning in the healing process. She talks very openly about the divorce and the heartbreak of losing her parents in recent years in this interview, and lets us all into her world as we talk about the role of therapy and grieving and faith in the healing process. Blanca understands that her identity is rooted in Christ, but she's very bold to say that she doesn't need to be religious to know and trust Jesus. We talked about what it was like for us to both go through our own deconstructions, but still come out with a solid faith in Christ and how we're expressing His love in the world. We talked about her pilgrimage to Puerto Rico to reconnect with her remaining family and friends there, and how that was part of her journey to freedom as she revisited her past. Now, Blanca's father left the family when she was just 6 years old, dealing with his own demons and addictions, but she shares an amazing story about how he found Christ when running for his very life from some very rough people, and how that eventually won her to the Lord as well, resulting in her powerful international music ministry and career that is bringing listeners hope as they deal with their own life struggles. But before I unleash this incredible interview on you today, it's my privilege to tell you about my friends over at Music City Acoustics. If you have a home studio, or your church needs some better acoustical treatment so that you're not driving people away with horrible sound, my friends at Music City Acoustics are standing by to hook you up with some state-of-the-art sound panels, bass traps, and all sorts of sound-absorbing materials that will make you and your listeners very happy indeed. They came in and totally changed the sound of my studio, and I don't have any post-production hassles with lots of those nasty little sound waves bouncing all over the place. You walk into my studio and it sounds elegant, highly professional, and looks like $1 million, even though it costs a tiny fraction of that for sure. So if you're in the market for some great sound treatment in your home studio, office, church, or Winnebago, give my peeps over at Music City Acoustics a shout. I actually chased them down to sponsor us because I'm in love with their product. Mention the Chiz Pod to get a fabulous deal on your first order, and you'll be so glad that you did. All of their info is in the show notes, or you can visit with them over at musiccityacoustics.com. That's musiccityacoustics.com, another homegrown business right here in my hometown of Nashville, Tennessee. All right, well, I'm really pumped about this interview, and I just can't wait for you to experience this beautiful woman of God who is boldly sharing her healing story of surviving sexual trauma, divorce, and loss, and helping us all learn to be the bravest version of ourselves that we can be. I've fallen deeply in love with her music, even as a new fan, and we had the best talk ever, even though we'd never met before today. As I let Blanca in the Zoom room, I was dancing to her puppy song because I wanted to audition to be one of her dancers. She said my moves were impressive, but maybe not right now. Well, seriously, this is a fantastic interview that's going to make you fall in love with her too. So please welcome Dove Award-winning, Premios ARPA Award winner, an artist with millions of YouTube views and millions of fans in both the Anglo and Hispanic worlds, survivor, singer, social media influencer, fashionista, and my new best friend, Blanca. Well, Blanca, welcome to Song Revolution.
Hello, everyone. Feels so nice to be here.
I was telling you before we started recording that I'm a new fan, but I am a fan. Started seeing you everywhere with the new record, and I follow New Release Today. They're great friends, and our podcast is on their platform. And I thought I got to find out who Blanca is, because it just, I don't know, just the clothes. I mean, just the wardrobe alone. I mean, it's just, come on.
I mean, here's my jacket that I wore in that picture that's behind you.
Yeah.
This is, a part of the brand is the clothes. So I get what you mean.
Well, you do it so beautifully, and your team, man, they're knocking it down. I mean, all of your videos, of course, your production, your songs, it's just killer. I'm just so excited to have stumbled upon you and getting to know your music a bit. So, all right, so let's just jump right in to the real stuff, because I know enough about you at this point, having kind of dug into a lot of interviews, your YouTubes, not only your music, but your soul. It's like, oh my gosh, you're just like way out there. You know, you're just so real. And I know people say that, and you might hear that a lot, but just your heart is so huge, and you're so vulnerable, transparent, and it's just beautiful. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you, you've lost your parents over the last number of years, the divorce, therapy, single mom, you're doing life, kind of on your own, right now. How does it feel to be Blanca right now?
You know what? And I've said this a few times in interviews, but it's the best description is the juxtaposition of pain and beauty. Like, to go through heartache, to go through loss, but then feel also like there's a rebirth. And this awakening is kind of where I found myself in. And that's why I feel so strongly that God is I know he's in every part of our story, right? And none of it is wasted. None of it is like for no reason. Because when I think of this process, I never would have asked for it the way that I got it, of course. And I don't think he's punished me in some way by having me lose my parents or walk through a divorce. But he's taken these really hard places and has allowed me to bloom in the midst of it, right? In the midst of this desert, I've been like this flower that has found herself. And so this process hasn't been easy, but I don't know that I would have gotten here had I taken a different road or had it gone differently for me. Like, there was a lot of growth that needed to happen. And I'm thankful that he's held my hand through that process. But Blanca right now feels freedom and joy in the midst of pain. She feels like she's growing and she's healing and she's finding herself. And that's a beautiful thing to acknowledge and celebrate.
Well, not to just like belabor the point, this wonderful transformation that you've been through, but what was pre-growth, pre-pain Blanca? Were you just kind of you were already an artist, you were already making music, things were already beginning to go really well for you. So let me put it this way. Those of us who are discovering you now, we're seeing the vulnerable, heart, the big heart, that you're sharing out of your pain, but we didn't know you before. So what were you like before in contrast, if that's
I'm a work in progress.
Yeah.
So there's still some growth that needs to happen. But pre-Blanca was super fearful, super anxious. I want a people pleaser. All of these things are internal. They don't really have to do with my music, but then they flow into these creative parts of who I am and how I function. If I can't feel my own worthiness, like, how can I portray that in taking risks or trying things with my sound or my music, So there was this sense of fear that I carried consistently. And a lot of it is, if you've looked into my story, there's been traumatic experiences that's happened ever since I was, younger. I dealt with abuse and just these hard things that created trauma and then trickled into my adult life, And so now I think when you're confronted with these kind of hard moments that you can't really hide from and you can't stay numb from, and you can't just continue to fear down and like not growing, you're kind of forced into this place of awareness and waking up and being like, what am I doing with my life? How can I learn from this experience? God, how are you in this? And please show me the direction that I need to go in from here. So I'm grateful for all of it.
Yeah. Was it the divorce that you carried all that you were into the marriage, but do you feel like it was the breakup that really forced you more into dealing with all of those hidden things?
Yeah, I think, and I've never really shared, like people don't know like what happened within my divorce and certain things. And, but I think the kind of like the unworthiness that I felt and the dishonor and kind of losing myself in that, I realized that I had put almost like all of my dependency, all of who I was in my identity as a wife and as a mother. And when that was taken, it was like, what else? Like, what is left of me? Because I've dealt with all these other kind of traumatic things. And here is where I found that I was in some form needed. And when I wasn't, it was rock bottom,
Wow.
So it caused kind of me to do some inner searching. And like I've said, and God met me there. I really fully mean that. Like he began to peel back the layers and take me back to the beginning of certain things that I had agreed with that weren't a part of my story. And I had to kind of like let go of it and find freedom in who he's created me to be.
I think that's so insightful because through life, and I've got some years on you, I still could be a hot dancer though for you. I know I could, but I've got some years and I've been through some similar things where I had to face the agreements that I had made with life or with some unknown kind of vow inside or some part of my story that I thought defined me. And it's got to be scary it has been for me, to deal with those things and I'm out on the other side. You said, okay, I love your documentary. Is it Pedazos? Did I say that?
Pedazos, good job.
Pedazos? All right, I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And so you said sometimes we must confront our past to find that true peace and freedom. So do you feel that you're tasting more and more of that? And how is that working out for you?
I don't know if that comes with age. I don't know if this is part of the journey, but I definitely feel like it's been this sense of newfound freedom when you start letting go of some of those things. And yeah, we might not always get it right. It's not about perfection. It's not about, like you get it perfectly every single time, but it's like about being willing to, fall on your face every once in a while because you're trusting that God has you, number one, and that even in those faults, your worth and who you are in him isn't like lessened. Because I think that was my issue. It's like I spent most of my time either regretting my past or fearing the future. And I never lived in what he had for me in the moment and what he was trying to show me right now. So it's like, I think that freedom of letting go of those things and just being and knowing that I may, I have choices. I have a voice and I may not always get it right, but that's okay. Like as long as I'm trusting in my own intuition and kind of this God-given discernment that it's okay to be like, oh, I could have chose better, but let's just keep moving forward. There's freedom in that.
Now, it's obviously everything you've been through seems to flow out in your music. It seems to be very cathartic, very personal, and incredible. The gospel's in there, but you're in there, you're pouring your heart out. So I know it's affected all of this new peace and freedom has definitely affected your music, and it's incredible. How do you feel that it's affected the way that you interact with the people that follow you and love your music, like the ministry? Kind of like after the concerts or, in the green room or how do you
Yes.
feel it's affected that?
I feel it's like a few things that it's affected because I think first off, when you experience hardship, it gives you this new level of understanding. So when I have women come up to me and say, I've been married for 20 years and it all fell apart and here I am trying to find myself, the way that I can understand that feeling is way different than I could have said, 5 years ago that I understand. So it's given me this level of connection with certain listeners and fans that have really connected to my story. And then past that, I feel like there's a sense of it almost feels like a handhold, right? There's like this new sense of me now. The more aware I am, the more present I am. It's like, oh, we're actually in this together, and as I heal, you heal, and vice versa. Like, we're giving each other the strength through what God is doing to say, like, you're not alone in this and I'm here. So I feel like that experience with fans to be more open and more vulnerable has allowed the opportunity for me not just to give, but to also receive from what they've been going through on their own healing journey.
I think it just deepens it, doesn't it? When you're able to share in a transparent way, the pain that you've been through, it really does give us permission, to be okay with sharing ours when it's generally in the church, it's not okay, and we've all been through that. And, I don't need no stained glass to be washed in the blood. Come on. I love
Come on now.
I just need your real love. So where is that kind of shaking out for you as far as like, your spirituality? I know, you have a deep relationship with Christ, but kind of where are you in the mix of all the religious stuff in our culture? If that's a fair question.
Yeah, I feel like this is the stuff I'm talking about. If I could be 100% honest, I feel like you hit a point when you go through hardship that everything gets shaken, right? And then you're like, you know what? I don't even know. Why do I believe what I believe? Why do I close my eyes when I pray? Why do I feel the need that if I don't do this, that I'm not holy? Why is it like I started to question all of it? But normally I would fear that. And I would fear that I was doing wrong in the questions.
Right.
But in reality, it brought me closer to the Lord because I feel like he invites those things and he says, oh, now we're connecting. Now I'm seeing the heart of who you are. And I feel like you're allowing me into those places. Right. So for me, there's been like, you hear this word, it's like this deconstruction of myself. And then within that, maybe I was over extreme of like asking too many questions, but then I was able to rebuild the foundation and say, oh, now I see why I believe what I believe, because this is a personal encounter with you, God. This isn't because of religion. This isn't because someone told me that this is who I needed to be or what I need to do in order to be good enough. This is because I'm your daughter. And I feel that now more than ever. So I definitely feel like I've grown in this sense of understanding and kind of like grace for people and just like really seeing what God did for me and the journey he's taken me on to say like last thing I want to preach is any type of religion, in the sense religion is needed, but the religious spirit of it's by your works, it's by, how good you are that makes you to be loved by God.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I came to Christ as a kid at 18 and immediately went into ministry, had this long career in music business, working with the Gaithers, with Integrity Music. And so there was always kind of a thin veneer of religion, even on top of all the Christian music stuff, you know? And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but it's just, it's so easy. And I've also been in ministry for 40 years because I'm old. But it's like, you know, it's so easy to be a professional Christian. And I
Oof,
think
I'm
somewhere,
feeling that.
yeah, girl, I mean, I think somewhere along the line, I got so mixed up in being on the platform. I was, you know, mega churches, traveled the world singing and teaching worship and hanging out with great people, you know, doing records and all that kind of thing. And, um, yeah, I never had your wardrobe, but that would have been inappropriate. But, uh, but, you know, it's like, I think that somewhere along the line, I started identifying myself with that. Does that make sense? And so
Yeah,
when it went
yeah.
away, you know, when I hit the skids and went through a real tragic kind of loss of my identity, people that listen to me know this. I'm not saying something I don't say out, you know, in public, but I hit the bottom, man. I got really depressed, circumstantially depressed, and then went into this really almost dangerous apathy to where I was deconstructed. And I did go through this. Do I even believe in God? If I do, what do I believe about God? And, you know, if I don't tithe, is my refrigerator really going to stop working? I mean, what's going to happen, you know? Right. And I mean,
It's
there's so
not
much,
funny, but it's funny because
but there's
I
so
have
much
never
fear.
had.
I mean, there's so much fear and control, you know, in Christendom and in evangelicalism and with the way it's all gone in the culture, I was just like, I can't do that. And what I've come back to, I think, is a more organic, simple kind of thing. And that's why I love your lyrics so much, that you don't need no stained glass, you know, and that's been hard because my life was the church. My life was all that. And not to hijack this conversation, I'm just trying to identify with you and say, you know, I get it. And I think there's a
So
lot of
good.
us out here who are like church alumni, and we're like, how do we have faith? It's probably simpler than I'm going to make this question, but how do we be Christians without being churchified people that are judgmental and pointing our fingers and you know, so that's why I like the freedom that I hear in you and your story. And
Yes.
I'm going to shift for just a second because I love your documentary. I'm so jealous. I want a documentary like that. I mean, Puerto Rico, your aunties and your dad's brother, and man, I'm tearing up. It was I just watched it. It was beautifully done.
Thank
My
you.
goodness. I mean, seriously, everybody ought to go watch Pedazos. It's so incredible.
Thank
Did
you.
you have fun? Did you just have
Oh
fun
yeah,
making that? And
I had a
the girls
blast.
with the girls with the curls doing all the hair thing. I mean, it's just amazing.
We did it all. We
Yeah.
saw the best of Puerto Rico. I got to do it with my son and my family. Like it was an amazing
Mm.
experience. And I'm so glad. I really do believe, like I said it in the documentary, it was like I got to connect so much to who I am, my roots and my family. And I had, you know, recently lost my mom and in doing that. So
Yeah.
it was just like so fresh. And so it was it was an amazing experience.
Mm. I could see in one of the clips of your mom, you guys were having a whipped cream fight or something, and he turns around and makes a face at the camera, and it's like, that was so
Yeah.
good. Tell us about your dad. He was a musician, a singer. Was he a gospel singer, or I couldn't?
Yes,
Okay,
he
tell
was.
us
So
about that.
I feel like I'm turning into my window right now. This is Orlando weather. I don't know if this is going to be seen, but guys, I am not a skeleton. This the sun is just all of a sudden wanting to come
Yeah,
out.
you got to have this stripy skeleton there.
I know. Um, my dad was a salsa singer. So he did Spanish music. It was a Christian singer, and he kind of, to me, was such a pivotal light in my journey because Uh, I don't know how much you know of my story, but my dad, growing up, he was kind of on a rough track, had a lot of substance abuse, and was in and out of trying to get rehabilitated, but couldn't quite get it. And so was out on the streets a lot. And so him and my mom divorced when I was 6. And, but it's so awesome to see his journey. He ended up having this God encounter, like just him and the Lord. No 4 walls of a church, no kind of idea of what you would think would happen. He was, I don't get to, I'll share this because I never really get to share his testimony, but he was in the middle of kind of about to lose his life. He was in a bad situation with drugs and got some people really upset. And so he was running for his life, and he ran through the woods and was hiding in the woods for hours. And he found God there. He said he felt God's presence, and he said, if you save me from this, I promise I will serve you for the rest of my life. And he did. God saved him from that. He was able to escape. And through a lot of, from there, my dad got clean. He locked himself up in a room for basically a week. My family would feed him under a door, and he got his life together. But it was so real. What we got to experience of my dad's relationship with the Lord and how he trusted that journey and that process solely because he felt it. It's like, it was impactful. And so as a young girl, being 16, 17 years old, I'm like, whatever this man is talking about has to be real, because I'm literally seeing such a transformation. And so I ended up giving my life to the Lord, and seeing my dad transition into doing music full time and kind of seeing that journey. And so it really, for me, was like such a huge piece.
Did you ever get to, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go.
Did you ever get to sing with him? I loved the clip.
Yes, I did. So I got to, on 2 of his albums, he put me as a feature on one of the songs. And one of the songs was called Thank You, Lord, in Spanish. But it was a vision that he had of how it was me as a young girl coming to God and saying, like, look at everything you did in my dad, look at what you've done in restoration in my family. And so the song spoke about that, and he sang it with me. So it was beautiful, and I cherish those memories so much.
Oh yeah, those are very, very special memories. I actually recently did a concert at the Franklin Theater here in town, and Blanca, I have not sung in public in 7 years, and it used to be my life. I was on the platform all the time.
How was that?
I sweated profusely for the first 2 songs, and then I finally settled down. I mean, you know what? It's like, and I was working with a great vocal coach who used to be on the new Mickey Mouse Club. Big shout out to Jen McGill. She really prepped me. I couldn't have done it without her, but she was on the new Mickey Mouse Club with Justin Timberlake and Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, Ryan Gosling. And so she's a powerful coach if you ever need a coach, but you sound like you're doing great. But she really helped me walk out and feel like I could be in voice and do it. I don't know if you've ever heard of Don Moen. He's a famous worship leader, famous for the song Give Thanks and I Just Want to Be Where You Are, some 80s and 90s songs. He was on the show with me, and Kobe James, who is a centricity music artist. So it was amazing. But the reason I'm bringing it up is my daughter sang with me, and her name is Allie. She's a pediatric nurse. Big shout out to Allie. I don't think she listens to my show, but I'm going to make her listen. But let me tell you what, the audience cheered for her. I mean, she did a song and a worship song, and then she and I did a duet, Vince Gill and Maren Morris song called Dear Hate, and they cheered for her. So I've told her she's not welcome on my stage anymore because she's going to totally upstage me. But she did. She got all the cheers. But what a special moment. And the dozens of people that I've talked to since, that they're like, yeah, you were good, but your daughter, she was great. So I know your dad in heaven is so proud of you, not just your heavenly father, but your dad is very proud of you, as well as your mom. I mean, and so not to just belabor the documentary, but it was really, really precious to watch your pilgrimage back through that and to kind of reestablish something in yourself, that it was palpable. It was real. And kudos to your producer, director, crew. Wow.
Yes.
What?
Gabby, my manager now, her name is Alex, and her husband is the one that did the documentary. So our first interactions were during that documentary. She was there the whole time with me, and how they were able to capture like my heart and express it was beautifully done. So shout out to Gabby and Alex.
Yes, kudos, man. That's just awesome. Well, I've got just a couple more questions for you. This has been so rich for me. What's the one question that nobody's asking you that you wish they would?
You've nailed a lot. My biggest thing, like I'm being serious. I think this has been such an awesome interview because it feels really free, and like you've done the research and have listened to the stuff. So it always makes it so much better. But I think my newfound, what do you call that? Like my goal with my music has been to, one, set a new standard for women within this industry, to allow us to, like, I want to do things that feel cool and look fresh. And like when you're talking about the wardrobe and you're talking about, the video and the quality of what we're doing, it's like, it's intentional because I want to do it with excellence. And I want to show that you can love God and still be uniquely who you are, and these are facets of who I am that I've hid for a long time. I was, again, and I say this all in love, but there was times where I find myself in my 20s and I was dressing and feeling and trying to sound like I was double my age to fit into a culture that I felt that if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be accepted, But I'm seeing now more and more that creating these kind of opportunities for girls to come to say, man, she was a reference for us. She showed us that this is possible in this style of music, or in, using your true culture and your roots, or, if you love to dance and all these things, these talents that God has given you, you can put that into your music that's still faith-based and has a positive message. So I feel really passionate about that. And you've touched on all of it. So that makes me so happy.
So glad. Yeah. Well, were you reticent to get into Spanish, the Spanish market, or was that something that just developed? Because I don't know who the guy was in your documentary who said, I've been telling her to do Spanish, music. Were you kind of reticent to do that because you felt like you had to make it more in the Anglo world?
Yeah. Well, one, I felt like it would be too much. Like it wouldn't be highly accepted with my music to try to introduce, like it would be confusing to people to try to introduce this whole other side of me. And there was times, where I would get like, oh, try to tone down your vibrato, or maybe, fix your diction, or let's see how you can be more presentable, like whatever these little things that I've grabbed onto along the way that made me think that these parts of me, whether it's my curly hair or the way that I speak or my roots, would be almost too much for someone to accept. But as I started embracing those things, I feel like now people really have grabbed onto who I am as a person and an artist. Not just, you can't, like, I don't know. There was a moment where I just felt very replaceable. And it's like, I'm a voice and that's about it. But now it's like, no, this is my story. These are my songs. And when people connect to that, it's because they're connecting to who I am and what God has done in me, not just because it's a good song that sounds like the rest of CCM, like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be that way. So
Wow. Well, I mean, for me as a newbie in your world, it's like, oh, it's coming across loud and clear. I'm a feminist. Come on. And, it's like, who needs all the microaggressions, that come out of the industry toward you've got to fix your diction or your hair or your clothes or whatever. You're stunning. You're doing it. It is just awesome to see you blossoming. I mean, I look back at your music 7 years ago and thought, okay, that's stellar. But now the new stuff, wow. So way to go. Kudos. Man, I know we're new acquaintances here, but I'm very proud. I just feel so excited for you. And one of my dreams is that our Nashville Christian Songwriters materials, our coaching materials, I coach songwriters all over the world, but I really want to get our materials into Spanish and really encourage, Hispanic Christian songwriters. And, so say a little prayer for me as the Anglo old white guy gets, tries to get jiggy with it. But you are awesome. How do you like to interact with your fans? I mean, you've got millions of them. I'm looking at all these hits on your YouTubes and your socials. So what's your favorite way?
My favorite way is probably through Instagram and Facebook. It's where I'm most present. I'm trying, guys, on the TikTok. But,
all you got to do is
not there yet.
You just got to do one little move and
then just keep posting.
Yeah, that's what it does.
But even on officialblanca.com is my website. We have all my tour dates, my merch, and all of that up there if you guys want to check that out. And I'd love to hear, if you're listening to this right now, I'd love to hear your feedback and your thoughts. So make sure you send that my way.
Blanca, what a blessing. Thank you so much for spending a little time with us.
Thank you. Thank you. This was awesome. And I thoroughly enjoyed this interview. So thank you for taking the time out to speak to me.
I'm so glad. It's going to be fun. And hopefully you'll come back on the show again sometime.
Yes, we'll make it happen.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the show today. I hope that you'll jump over to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com and check out all the resources there to encourage you in your own songwriting. And if you like what we're doing, why not share this episode out on your socials? You can find the link in the show notes. We'll see you next time.